everybody. It's Kamenetzky Brothers Land O'Lakers podcast. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky coming to you. First one, Andy. First full podcast relaunching independently, like Christian Slater. Hold on. It's always good to open with a pump up the volume.
I was going to say right out of the gate, Brian, you are dating yourself as always. You can take the boy out of ESPN.
Well, I was trying to figure out where to go. I was trying to figure out where to go. Like, who are the independent operators in this space? The people who are disruptors, Andy, who are taking this thing and turning it on its ear and threatening the establishment. Who are those people? And it's Christian Slater in Pump Up the Volume.
I was going to say, it's actually going to be whoever plays Christian Slater in the reboot of Pump Up the Volume, which I guess in the podcast world isn't the worst idea.
No, it's not.
Hashtag copyrighted.
Christian Slater's still with us, correct? I'm not that
right, but
he's
still
alive.
But he's not gonna play Happy or
Hard
Harry. That's my point.
I'm just making sure I wasn't that far out of date.
No, you are incredibly out of date. Just because he's not dead doesn't mean that you're not out of date. I mean, if you referenced, Brian, like a 70s movie, like if you made a Five Easy Pieces reference with Jack Nicholson, just because Jack Nicholson isn't dead doesn't mean that the reference is
it might have been better. It still might have been better, like, something, the chicken scene or whatever. Anyway, so we are very excited to be back, very excited to be doing the show again. Obviously, it is we are on the brink of something really big with the Lakers as they enter the playoff bubble thing next week. We will be bringing the show every Monday in both audio and now video form, Andy. People can look at us.
Very excited.
Please, quite frankly, get your shit together. So I probably could have done better myself today. Mm-hmm. But we'll be doing that and bringing you some shows in between. I got to work on my lighting. Like, all of these, there's so much more to think about. The nighttime lighting, we were doing the late night show, worked better than what I'm currently dealing with. But anyway, as much as we can during the playoffs, certainly every Monday. Really excited to bring on our sponsor, Delicious Pizza. They got 2 locations, Hollywood and West Adams. 20% off if you use the password Cam Brothers. That's 20% off. It's either online at deliciouspizza.com. You do it in store if you're ordering there. Andy, the pizza is awesome. People should go eat it.
It's so good. I mean, we're really excited to be in business with Delicious, not just because, the relaunch and we love having, a partner with us in that, but just the idea of actually working with a company that we love the product. We both eat a lot of Delicious in real life. And also too, I mean, even in the pandemic, if you show up, it's worth, just peeking your head, looking around, just the eye candy in this place, because they have a background in music. They were Delicious vinyl. So it's really, really great, whether you're going to be ordering online, dropping by for pickup, whatever. Great pizza. It's awesome.
All right. So deliciouspizza.com, Cam Brothers for 20% off. So Andy, the Lakers are 2-4 in the bubble. They lost on Saturday to Indiana, 116-111. It was a TJ Warren show again for the Pacers. 39 points. He's the Michael Jordan of the bubble.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how he plays out of the bubble. He's had a good season, but he hasn't been this good. I guess some guys react very well to the bubble. Looking forward to one of those people being a member of the Lakers.
Yeah, well, any of them. And so the Lakers 2-4. They won that first game against the Clippers. I'm going to give them credit for it. It was not beautiful. LeBron actually played very poorly in that game, or relatively poorly. AD was fantastic. But since then, Anthony Davis has been
He's been very up and down.
Well, he's had one other good game and then 3 very mediocre ones. And LeBron's been pretty ordinary by LeBron standards. Certainly not that playoff LeBron thing. The root of the problem here, Andy, is the Lakers simply cannot score. I mean, the offense this is the 4th ranked offense in the NBA coming into the bubble. And they have, I'm just going to read you some numbers. They're shooting 25% from 3-point range in the bubble. That's dead last by a mile. It's not like they were that good coming in, but this is dead last by a mile. 41%, also last overall, just from the floor. They have the best field goal percentage in the league coming into Orlando. They are now, they're shooting 41% since they got there, 73% from the line. Their 97.9 offensive rating is obviously last. And just as a reference, Andy, Golden State, who were the worst offensive team in the NBA this year by about 1.5 points, which is a lot. They averaged 104.4 points per possession during the part of the season where they're playing. So the Lakers are about 8 points. What is that? Or I'm sorry, 6.5 points worse than the worst offense in the league right now. That's bad, and they're 19th of the 22 teams in the bubble in turnovers. That is not a recipe for a good offense, Andy.
No, they've really struggled. We were talking about the outside shooting. Among the rotation mainstays, only Kuz at almost 42% is shooting above 31% from behind the arc. The next closest is AD at 30%. Then you start going down. LeBron at 28.6, KCP 27.9, Danny Green 20%, Caruso and Dion Waiters both around 15%. J.R. Smith 0.0. He's got the
Mr. Blutarski.
He's got the Blutarski grade point average. And it's also concerning too, Brian, because like you said, this has never been a great outside shooting team to begin with. But heading into the season,
no, they were like 16th, 17th in league, pre-restart.
I wrote about this for The Athletic. Heading into the last 10 games before the season was paused, they were shooting just 31% over those 10 games. And for example, a guy like KCP very quietly had been in a real slump from behind the arc over like the last couple months heading into that pause. He had been so hot for a while, and he picked up his game so much from just that miserable start that I think it's – and the Lakers, were coming off that huge weekend with wins over the Bucks and the Clippers. It had kind of flown under the radar that, KCP kind of back into that shooting slump that began the season. And, we're seeing the 10 games, too, that the Lakers were not shooting well from behind the arc. Their bad numbers were lifted up a lot by LeBron and AD.
Right.
Like AD in particular.
AD was like around close to 40% after the post All-Star break. So, I mean, he was shooting very well.
So he was 41% for those final 10 games before the season was paused. So this is something that the Lakers need to figure out, but also too is something that you look at and you say, all right, their overall offense, I have faith in them that it's going to get better on balance. But this part of it though is going to be up and down and something they're going to have to play through.
Well, you can be a bad not bad. It's hard to be bad at three, but you can be an ordinary 3-point shooting team and still win a lot of games and be a good offense. You can be an ordinary free throw shooting team and still win games. You can be an ordinary, turnovers. Like maybe you turn the ball over a little too much and still be a decent offense. You can't do all of those things. Like you can't be bad at all of that stuff. And they're not just, like disappointing or a little below their standard for the year. They have been flat bad since the bubble. And it is, to say the least, it's problematic. The question becomes, what can you do? And, I think this is where, you start asking questions like, how much does Avery Bradley not being there make a difference? How much can you get? Hold on, let's just like, how can you get, what the Dion Waiters? Like, what about KCP? What about all of these things? But let's start with Bradley, because it's at least part of it, like not having him there.
I have a theory in terms of why his absence is hurting the offense. He's one of the only guys on this team who regularly uses an in-between game. Like everyone else is pretty much at the rim or they're behind the arc. It's basically like Kuzma and Bradley are really the only guys who regularly do a lot in the mid-range.
Right.
And Bradley's actually pretty effective there. And also, too, it's just something different in terms of, in terms of what you have to scheme against, in terms of giving you like a different type of wrinkle. Like it's something else the Lakers could go to. And right now it's pretty much been all either driving to the rim or from behind the arc where they're not hitting anything. And in that sense, yeah. I think they're missing Bradley. I mean, beyond the stuff that he does, defensively and, be able to pick up 94 feet. And I think in some ways just disrupt what the other team is doing. Offensively, I think they just miss having something different than what they're doing now.
But part of it is too, Andy, I think that is he awesome? Is Avery Bradley the solution to a great offense? No, he's not. But he's another guy. Like Vogel has been playing. It's something else. It's another guy that when 4 shooters are ice cold, you can turn to the 5th guy and say, what about you? And Bradley he's had moments where he was pretty bad, and he's had stretches where he was amazing. But it's when you're Vogel and you've been Frank Vogel and you've been playing kind of that rotation roulette with guys who aren't AD and LeBron all season long, and now all of a sudden you just have fewer choices, you have fewer options. And Rondo is an option. He's not there. Will be back at some point. It hurts, and I do think one thing that we kind of maybe glossed over, sort of the royal we and Lakers fans, because you look at the record with KCP as a starter, it was 17-3 in the regular season when Bradley was out. The metrics, the advanced numbers show the starting lineup with Bradley is significantly better, particularly defensively, than the starting lineup with KCP.
Sure.
And so I think we're starting to see a little bit of that there too. And obviously that's not anything that you can fix. And maybe you turn to Andy, a shot creator in Dion Waiters.
Well,
how's that going?
He was great in the scrimmages. I mean,
yes,
Dion Waiters came out of the gate because we had not seen him with the Lakers at all. He never took the court before the season stopped. And those first few games in the scrimmage, Dion played really, really well. Since then, he's gotten progressively worse. Over the 6 games the Lakers have played that actually count, he's averaging 10 points a game on 10 shots a game.
That's not efficient.
No, it is not.
36% overall from the floor.
And some of the things that Dion does that have always been problematic, whether you're talking, defensively, whether you're talking about just the excess dribble, they start to become more pronounced, in these moments where he's shooting, below 40% from the court. Like he didn't play at all in the loss against Indiana. For that matter, neither did J.R. Smith, who's been miserable.
Yeah,
neither one of us thought.
We don't need to talk about him.
Well, I mean, neither
if
one
we
of us
if the Lakers get to JR, if we get to a point where we're talking about a lot of J.R. Smith, things have gone very wrong.
Right. I mean, I was just going to say neither one of us thought JR was going to be a part of the rotation to begin with, not
right.
a regular part of it. But, him and Dion both sitting, Quinn Cook and Taylor Horton Tucker getting a lot of extended minutes. On one hand, I think Frank Vogel is tinkering because he has the luxury of being able to do it now because the Lakers have the number 1 seed locked up. But I do think that Frank Vogel actually is looking right now for something that might work better because, collectively the offense has been struggling so much, and Dion is starting to do some of the things that make you skeptical about Dion Waiters in the
correct. And this is what I mean. Weren't we all kind of hoping you hope against? And Waiters is not a terrible player, and he's had moments where, but you're sort of, and you saw it in the scrimmage. It's like the concept of Dion Waiters, like what the ideal version of Dion brings to the Lakers. A secondary shot creator, a guy can move the ball a little bit, and an underrated guy for assists. He can pass the ball a little bit, but you get those good moments, and he's the type of guy, particularly since it's somebody that they haven't had, Andy, I think, where the good moments, like one good moment, kind of overshadows 8 bad ones until you start really looking at it, because you're so excited that he was out there and you have this tool in the toolkit that you stop paying attention to the other stuff.
Well, I was going to say, too, with Dion, and, we saw this a few years ago with Kuzma, his rookie year. With Dion, there's a found money factor. Because if it works, you feel like you're the one team that was smart enough to recognize what he could bring to the table when he was, a street free agent, cut by the Grizzlies, exiled by the Heat this year. I mean, they 3 suspensions.
I mean, look, who among us hasn't been suspended 3 times from our job? And before we get fired, it happened. I mean, why are we so tough on there, but by the grace of God go we. It could happen to any of us.
Who among us hasn't maybe eaten one more bite of that gummy that we should?
That's right. I haven't been on a flight lately, so it's hard for me to really identify with it. But flying is scary, Andy. You look up in the sky at an airplane, it shouldn't work the way it does. I remember thinking that one day, looking at it, I've been kind of scared of flying ever since. That doesn't make sense to me. The Iron Bird flying in the sky. And I don't blame Dion for taking a little bit too much gummy.
Oh, I was going to say, though, I mean, whatever. I mean, I have no idea if Dion Waiters is afraid of flying or not. I mean, he's been doing this pretty much his whole life. So, I mean, I'm not going to go there. but I am willing to state, even without having talked specifically to Dion about this, it would be weird to all of a sudden have the drugs hit while on a flight. Like that's a weird place to all of a sudden have it just go. And
Yeah,
like,
no,
oh,
right. If you
wow.
weren't expecting it, but it's, I
Oh,
mean, but like,
wow, am
do
I
you
high?
not think that? Do you not think that he knew what was coming? I mean,
No,
what
no,
did
but
someone
if it's
slip him a Mickey in the
no, no,
in
no,
the
no,
hotel
no.
bar?
It's no, it's the if it's more than you expect.
That's
If the
true.
effect is more than you were counting on, like if you've ever been more high
Oh,
or
no,
more on drugs
in
than you ever
college,
planned to be,
my
hypothetically
first
speaking.
experience with edibles in college were these guys. I was my junior year. I spent overseas with, and there were these Australian guys, or sorry, Irish guys who lived on our floor. Like literally, they camped out on our floor. We called them the lads. The lads
Hmm.
didn't have a lot of money, but they
Right.
did have a lot of weed, and so they
Hmm.
paid us in pot brownies and stuff,
As one does.
as one does. It was a very lovely gesture from the lads, and so they gave me one. I'd never had an edible before. I ate the brownie. It was you know, a little it was okay, but it didn't really do much. So I grabbed one more on the way out
That's
the
the
door.
problem with edibles.
I
That's the
right,
problem is
and I
that
didn't
they
know that. And you know what movie we went to see? The English Patient. Now that that turned into
Jeez.
into a long evening.
I was going to say
Um,
that movie's long anyway.
right, and
Oh my
yeah,
God.
so I was zooted sitting with my friend watching The English Patient. Now that I really did have to rewatch it to decide whether or not I thought it was a good movie. My
two,
initial viewing wasn't helpful.
two things. I mean, first of all, in terms of experiences involving drugs gone bad. First of all, inappropriate movies to see high. When I was in high, you know this. When I was in high school, my buddy Dave and I went with a bunch of girls that we were friends with to go see the movie Beaches with Bette Midler and Barbara Hershey.
Yes.
And I don't know how we came up with this very, very wrong information, but we were under the impression that Beaches was this laugh out loud comedy. So we got really, really stoned before this movie. And it took about 5 minutes to realize that
It's
this is
not.
not a laugh
It's
out
not.
loud
It's not a
comedy.
laugh.
No,
I mean, it's not even a laugh really on the inside kind of movie.
no, it's like a
There's no really shouldn't be laughing at all.
no, it's a very serious melodrama. And the problem was the more and more serious this movie got, the funnier we found it. And we kept laughing and laughing. And it was upsetting the girls we were with who were like, you know, already sobbing, like, you know, they
Right.
were the prime demographic for this. Then finally, there's this scene where Barbara Hershey is in the hospital, like tubes everywhere on the verge of death. It's really serious. Bette Midler is losing it. They're going through all the things in their life that they encountered. And I burst out laughing, which leads to Dave bursting out laughing, which leads to the girls telling us, get out of the theater.
Right.
We spent the rest of this movie in the lobby laughing. The other time, and I'm not going to go too far down this road because it really could take us off track.
Not like
Let's just
now.
let's just say, hypothetically speaking, if you take too much substances, you might fear that you ran a guy out of college. Because my freshman year in our dorm, there was a night where I feared that I made a guy leave college because I reacted poorly to drugs.
Yeah. Do you remember his name? Do you
No,
remember his name?
I never met this kid before this.
Oh, it wasn't your roommate or anything.
Oh no, my roommate my freshman year.
It was part of the
Guy,
problem, if I remember
that
correctly.
guy was an expert.
Right.
No, this was a kid that I had never seen before on our floor in my life. And to make a long story short, out of my mind, I made him play chess with me at like 3 a.m. and then passed out in his room when everything wore off. I crashed. And the next morning I
Who
woke
won?
up.
That was a joke. Don't answer that question. Just keep
Well,
going.
it was discontinued. I passed out during the game.
Oh, okay.
Nobody won. Finally,
that sounds true on multiple levels. Nobody won.
No, I woke up the next morning.
Global thermonuclear war.
This guy was just sitting Indian style in his bed looking terrified. I don't know why he didn't call security. I don't know why he didn't do anything. He really should have. But I just look over at him, really
God.
sheepish, and I go, I'm really sorry. And I walked out of the room, and I never saw him again. Like, I really fear that I made this guy leave college.
It's possible.
Like,
It is
his
very
whole
possible.
future could have been ruined by me.
It's possible, and you should feel bad about it.
I do feel bad about it.
So how much of this do you think is actually going to matter in the playoffs? Because the thing about the Lakers in the playoffs is the entire deal is predicated on, because, like, remember the game that LeBron didn't play? Like, you look at that one and you go, this is not a good, like, it's not like an impressive roster.
It's a roster that is built specifically for LeBron to run it.
LeBron and AD, and
but LeBron to run it.
Right, sure,
like,
but just the talent on the team is centered around LeBron and Anthony Davis. And it's not that they have two stars, it's that they have two stars who are, if you want to use MVP voting as a kind of a measurement this year, they have two of the 5 best players in the NBA. Yeah. And so, and LeBron has a history of not just being an MVP caliber player, but a guy who cranks it up even higher in the playoffs. So the Lakers get playoff LeBron and Anthony Davis, who we're all kind of also expecting to elevate even from where he was in the regular season and find another 5% or 10% or whatever it's going to be. That's the whole deal. If those things don't happen, if LeBron is ordinary or AD is disappointing, it's going to be, I think, really hard for the Lakers to win, because the rest of the supporting cast, there is not a third guy who's going to step up and carry them through bad AD performances.
I think you can say that about every team in the league. If they're top,
other teams in the league have either more depth or more variety in how they can do it.
Not good enough to carry them through a series. If the other team's best players are playing well, there's not a single team in the league that can do that.
If you don't think that let's assume Lou Williams and Trez come back and they're able to play, that the Clippers have a little bit more wiggle room if Paul George has an off game because Lou Williams is there.
You said both Paul George and Kawhi
No,
Leonard.
I said I'm saying if one of those things doesn't happen, LeBron and Anthony Davis both have to be excellent throughout the playoffs for the Lakers to win a title. I don't think they can afford for one of them to be average. I don't think they can afford that.
Do I think Kawhi could carry the Clippers through that? Yeah. Do I think Paul George? No. I mean, there has not been evidence of Paul George being able to do that.
Fair point. Kawhi's got to be great, but they have more wiggle room because
they have more.
They have Lou Williams. They have other players. Like, if Luka's not good, the Mavericks aren't. I get your point, but the Lakers have less talent behind their best players than most of the high-end contending teams in the NBA.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, I don't want to go too far into the weeds of it, because ultimately they do need LeBron and Anthony Davis to play really well, just like you need, all teams, the elite teams need their elite players to play well. I mean, do the Clippers maybe have a little more margin with Lou? Sure, but we've already seen Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell can't carry a team through the playoffs. I mean, we've seen them get bounced in the first round.
Right. But again, I think the point is these guys have to be.
Why then, though, it's ultimately, to me, if, say, Paul George or if, say, Giannis with the Bucks was really struggling in a series, to me, it falls more on Chris Middleton to carry the Bucks, or falls more on Paul George than, say, Eric Bledsoe or Lou Williams. Like, I don't think it's actually the third or fourth guys that become the difference makers there. It's how much is that second guy struggling? Because the playoffs ultimately are about that.
Sure. The better your roster is, the more depth you have on your roster, the more margin for error you have to absorb a bad game or a bad pair of games from somebody important at the top of it. I just say that's, to me, that's kind of hard to.
Well, I mean, look, if the Lakers, I mean, right now, if nobody is playing well,
no, this version is not going to work.
Lakers aren't going anywhere.
No, this is not going to work against any of the 18, the teams that they might play in the first round. What they're doing now,
it's an extreme version of it. But if the Lakers continue playing like this, they could get bounced by Portland in the first round.
Absolutely, there's no question. There's no question. I did read there was an interesting. You kind of look about. Both of us have been concerned about the limits to their versatility. Like, if you take away a thing, and teams have been it seems to me that the plan is going to be, let's not try to take LeBron out of the game. You kind of can't take LeBron out of a game. He's sort of too smart for that, in terms of, if you throw too many double teams at him, you can, he's so good at moving the ball, finding. it seems like teams are very aggressively going to try to attack Anthony Davis with a lot of double teams, and that's what a lot of teams have been doing, and disrupt his rhythm to minimize him in the playoffs.
I actually think it depends on the team, because I think that I think a team like the Clippers, for example, that are so built to stop LeBron or slow LeBron, I could see them, or like the Raptors. You know, if say it ended up a Lakers.
Well, the Raptors threw a ton of bodies at AD. I mean,
but they also throw a ton of guys at LeBron too. I mean,
they're just they're a great defensive team,
right? I think it depends a lot on who you have. Like Houston, we saw them throwing a lot of stuff at AD, but I think that is in part because they really don't have anything to throw at LeBron at all. Like,
sure, I think that's fair. If you have to choose though, as an opposing coach, which of those guys that I think that you believe you can impact more?
It's an interesting question.
I think the answer is Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis doesn't have the track record. I mean, I realize he's been in the playoffs and he's had some good rounds, and but he's never been both deep into the playoffs or expected to go deep into the playoffs. So this is a different deal.
This is absolutely something new for Anthony Davis. I mean, if I were an opposing coach and I really thought I had the capabilities to focus in on disrupting LeBron effectively, that would be my first choice, because if you can make that work, the Lakers will fall apart. That being said, though, AD is probably the safer bet.
Right.
Because LeBron is really, really difficult to do.
And teams have been trying to do that for years. I mean, like, right. And so, there's 35 years old. It's the bubble, and LeBron's talked about it. It's like, it's a different deal. It's now to some degree, and this is one of the things that I think is interesting about it, is just, how much previous experience can you take in? And LeBron mentioned it, after the game on Saturday, that like, it's not the same. Like the ramp up, the lessons, the rhythm of it, it's not the same as every other playoff year. It's a little bit different. And so some of the lessons that this championship roster has, a lot of guys who've been through a lot of playoffs, don't necessarily apply. Now, the flip side of that, I think, Andy, is that you could say, because they have so much experience, they're more equipped to more quickly figure out what the new world order is. But it could at least mitigate a little bit of some of the advantage the Lakers might have had if everything had been normal. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to say right now what anything is. It is.
I mean, like you could play maybe inaccurate, but armchair psychiatrist with a team like Phoenix, who's been surprisingly killing it in the bubble. They may be
5-0 as we talk today on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, they may be so collectively inexperienced that they don't even know that this isn't normal. You know what I mean? Like they don't have so much ingrained in their head of what the experience is supposed to be like as you're ramping up.
As young and stupid as they are, I'm fairly sure they have at least a basic understanding that this isn't normal. But I understand your point.
When Devin Booker, for example, he's never experienced what this is supposed to be like, because his teams are basically done by February.
Well, also too, I think there's the element of, I don't even want to say the revenge I'm not saying they came with a chip on their shoulder, because Andy, everyone, including you, Andy Kamenetzky, including you, wondered why the Phoenix Suns were there. Because it was a reasonable question to ask. It's like who bleeping cares?
Standpoint, from a COVID standpoint,
right? It was
responsible
not
to bring
right.
him in.
I agree, but I'm glad they did. Now it's fun, and the bubble seems to be working that way. But it's one of those deals where you enter this thing with so little pressure and so little expectations that you can just get out there and kind of YOLO. And they've got talent on the team. It's not that they're completely without it. I mean, but nobody thought they'd be 5-0. But also, too, I wonder if teams, bubble teams were taking them particularly seriously, too. It's like you relax because you're playing Phoenix today. It's our gimme game, as opposed to, one of the better teams in the conference, in either conference. We'll see. If they got in, it would be amazing.
That would be really interesting. I mean, I would, again, assuming the Lakers get their shit together, which, again, if they don't, then
none of this matters.
Right. But assuming they do, I don't think Phoenix would have a prayer against
them. No.
But at least could be fun. If nothing else, this has been great for Devin Booker, because I think he's really been able to showcase a lot of what he can do. as a player. And this is the first time we've seen Devin Booker play games that mean anything at all. And he's really done well.
I was really starting to get not frightened like I thought they would win a series, but like way harder than you would want an opening round series to be with the Trailblazers. Then they blew that game on Saturday. That was terrible. And like it's not out of the question as much as we've been focused on Portland. They might not even get in. San Antonio won again on Sunday. Phoenix apparently is the greatest bubble team of all time. Like you cannot beat them. It is not out of the question that the Blazers don't even get in, which would be both surprising and disappointing on some level because it's a fun team. And, with Nurkic back, like you can tell they're better.
Oh, they're way better.
But they absolutely blew that game on Saturday to the Lakers' benefit. I mean, to me, unless you disagree, Andy, I think they're the most dangerous team of any of the ones that could get in.
Absolutely. Without question. I mean, just what Nurkic has brought on both sides of the ball. He's the type of guy that can have 5 blocks and 5 assists at the center position. He is an incredibly, I think, underrated playmaker. Mm-hmm. And, the ability to take some of that responsibility out of Lillard and McCollum's hands. Carmelo Anthony has been
good.
Well.
Skinny Melo's been good.
Skinny Melo he's played well. It's interesting. Like when the Blazers signed Melo, I was neither super high on it nor super low on it. Like I got the logic. I was like, I get that they're hemorrhaging points defensively, but there's nobody out there that's going to help with that. So you might as well bring in somebody who at the time was going to be playing the 4 because Ariza was there playing the 3 and Collins was out. I'm like, if nothing else, he can try to make your offense better. Like try to make just something better. And, he's playing really nicely. Collins makes a difference.
Well, look, the team, I mean, it's Les Whiteside. This team made the Western Conference Finals last year. You don't have to go back. Last year seems like it was in 1928, but it wasn't. It was last year, and they were a Western Conference finalist. So,
they're the team I would want to play the least. The Lakers.
I agree.
By far.
In summary, Lakers obviously we'll see what happens if they just go back to the mean of what they were, a 34.5% 3-point shooting team, where Dwight and JaVale, shoot at high percentage. They get out right. Michael Pina wrote a great story at GQ. We'll tweet it out, talking about how the Lakers struggle in the half court, which is 19th in the league coming into the bubble. That's gone down in half court offense since the beginning of the season. And so they got to figure out how to pick up the pace a little bit and get themselves some easy baskets, get out in transition, get those lobs to Dwight, get the lobs to JaVale. The offense just has the defensively, they've been good. That's not the problem. Defensively, they can't get a bucket when they need one.
Do you think, really quick, I don't want to spend too long on this.
But we have other things to talk about.
Vogel playing Talen Horton-Tucker extended minutes over 2 games. Do you think there's any chance that
I do now?
That I was going to say.
I do now. I didn't before. I thought it was to get him a little experience, and now I think it's this. I'm looking around here, and I don't see what I need to see. We may not get it from JR. Is not going to give it to us. No. Dion may not give it to us. I might have to break the glass on this thing at some point in the playoffs.
I was going to say, I feel like he's being evaluated right now like a young doctor who went to medical school and graduated, but he hasn't quite spent enough time as a resident, but all of a sudden he's being required to do surgery. Like there's a, first do no harm.
Right.
And I imagine he's looking at Horton-Tucker saying, okay, it's not so much about his skill set, even though it matters. It's how many mistakes is he going to make? Because he's really inexperienced. Before the bubble, I think he had played 5 regular season minutes. I mean,
I think you're right, and I think he's the youngest player in the league, isn't he?
He's among them. I mean,
I know he's close, but I think he might actually be the youngest player in the league.
He was 18, I believe.
He had a good G League season. He didn't, wasn't the G League MVP, but he had a solid season. I really do think, and he's trying not to say it, but I do think Frank Vogel is looking at this going, I might have to do, depending on what we need and when. I do wish Horton-Tucker was 3 inches shorter and maybe had like one more inch on his wingspan. Because when you watch him run around, like he's got a 7-foot wingspan, he's like 5'4".
Yes.
And it is, I
He
mean,
has
all
one of the
of these,
strangest
I realize
builds I've
they're
ever seen.
all NBA. These guys are all NBA players. They're all built in unusual ways, and they have long arms.
He's really unusually built.
It is rare that you can look at a guy and be like, well, that doesn't seem right. He's a little like the airplane that I was uncomfortable with. It doesn't seem like it's work. His arms are very clearly the wrong size for his body. Like somebody, when they assembled him at the factory, got it wrong. They got the specs wrong. And it's good for him, but it is very strange looking on TV. Like he doesn't dribble. He just taps the ball on the ground while he palms it. Is that legal? I don't know.
He watching Horton Tucker though, like in terms of things that are promising, if you had to put him on the floor, he doesn't play outside of what I think Vogel wants him to do.
Correct.
He hasn't seemed too much like he's sped up while he's out there, or the game looks super sped. I mean, he made some defensive mistakes. Like, you see him, like there were a few times he's been literally faked off his feet.
Right.
But this is also too, these are guys who are better than him, more experienced. He's still, I'm sure.
And also,
learning.
like, who's the alternative? It's not like if you put Dion Waiters on the floor, you're going to get
but I mean, like
results
from his
on that side.
I'm just saying from Horton.
No, I understand, but it's like, some of that's tall. Quinn Cook has been in the league for a long time. He's still a pretty lousy defender.
Yes, he is. Had a nice game against.
He did, but he was still a -8.
Yeah,
despite the output.
Yeah,
he's just not a good defender.
No, he isn't. The effort's there. He just isn't. He never has been. I think never will be. Horton Tucker doesn't seem to be, to my eye, making a ton of mistakes, which I think will help. And
our very, very keen and well-trained eyes. But you can tell, and it pops up in post games and all kinds of stuff. I rewound a
lot of stuff watching him because I really have been curious about this. And he had 4 steals against Houston. He hit 2 threes against Indiana. It would not shock me if he ended up the 10th guy.
I agree. I think there's a possibility that he plays, which is.
I didn't think there was a prayer before.
No, I didn't before. I do think there's a chance he plays now, which is probably a red flag. To be perfectly honest, like going into the playoffs, that is probably a red flag.
It's not ideal.
Frank Vogel does not want to be going, I want to play that. Where he's busting through. It's not what Michael Porter Jr. is doing in Denver right now. It's not that. Where he's like that guy is busting through and becoming like a go-to guy on a team with a lot of good players on it. Yeah. Just a reminder, Cam Brothers, 20% off at deliciouspizza.com. You go online or in store, Cam Brothers. You tell them that and you get 20% off your pie or whatever else you order there. West Hollywood and West Adams. Really good pizza. Go eat the pizza.
So
it's
good.
Delicious pizza. That's why they call it that. Also because of the vinyl, but also because it's delicious. Frank Vogel, Andy, was not one of the 3 finalists for Coach of the Year. You and I are not necessarily awards people. Neither one of us get super wrapped up in this. It was Budenholzer in
they don't even
Milwaukee.
Let us vote, so in some ways, it's not our business.
I'm not allowed to vote in even real elections. I'm not allowed to vote in anything. Budenholzer, Nick Nurse,
You're not even a felon. What's that about?
And Billy Donovan. Just people don't think I should do it. It's irresponsible.
Felons,
here's my take on this.
Vote, but that's another story.
I would have put him in there instead of Bud.
Me too.
But I also would have put Eric Spoelstra in instead of Bud. I think you can make an argument for Taylor Jenkins in Memphis.
Yeah, he's been
somewhere in that team could make the playoffs, Andy. The team is supposed to win 16 games this year. And they're going to make.
They expected to win so few games that they sat had Andre Iguodala just off to the
hanging
side.
Just all year.
I mean, because nobody, Iguodala or Memphis, thought they actually were going to win games.
And if they actually get in, they've had some injuries. It's not like it's been smooth sailing. Yeah. And now if they manage to hold on to that spot without Jaren Jackson Jr., like that's really impressive. You could put Taylor Jenkins in there. Nate McMillan doesn't get nearly enough love for the season that they had in Indiana. Like, so there are a lot of candidates that you could put in there. And it's hard for me to get worked up that Vogel didn't get there. But I do believe when you look and you break down all the stuff that the Lakers have been through over the course of the year, he's got a strong case to make.
Yeah, he does. He does. I mean, it's
not offensive that he wasn't there.
It's hard with Budenholzer because, coach of the team with the best, who's been best team in the league, best record in the league. And we know Budenholzer is a good coach, my vote would be for Nick Nurse, and I think Nick Nurse is going to win.
I agree with you.
I think in very short order, he has established himself as one of the best coaches in the entire league. He's really, really good. And Billy Donovan, I think, has done a terrific job too. I would have Vogel as my third, but it's one of those things though, where I will say this, I don't think it's a matter of Vogel not getting respect or getting overlooked. There's been a lot of talk, and I think an appreciation this year.
I think
not
so.
just locally, but even nationally, of everything Vogel's done this year in terms of, walking into a scenario where he was like the 80th choice with, Jason Kidd perceived as the guy looking over his shoulder with a knife, ready to stab him. Like he's had that all year. He's had the fiasco in China. He's had the death of Kobe Bryant. Like he's had to get guys to buy in really quickly. And in a lot of ways by guys, I mean, LeBron. And you can tell he won as much as I think LeBron was aware that it was in his best interest to work well with Frank Vogel, because you don't want to be seen as the guy who's run two coaches out of town.
Correct.
Where it starts looking like maybe the problem is LeBron. But even that being said, I think Vogel won LeBron's respect in a sincere way pretty quickly.
I agree. And
he's been really good this year.
I think, you could say, well, the Lakers, they have two of the 5 best players in the NBA. And, they've been pretty healthy, for the most important players in the team have been pretty healthy this year.
Yep.
There's that, all those things. But I think Vogel's done an excellent job with a better roster than they had last year, and a more well-constructed roster, but still one where you got to pull some strings, and he's done. So I think the reward for him is all the people going, hey, what about Frank Vogel? I think putting him in the top 3 would have been deserved. He's certainly worthy of it.
He wasn't going to win anyway, though.
Correct.
I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, I think Nick Nurse will win. And in that sense, it wouldn't matter if Vogel was there or not.
Before we go, we always like to take a quick look at what's been sort of trending over the week on Twitter, fun things that have been popping up on social media, Andy, because we're hip. 2 guys, 22-year-olds from Gary, Indiana, Tim and Fred Williams, they're twins. They kind of blew up this week because of a video of them watching Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight.
Or hearing it.
Literally. Hearing it for the first time. That's what they do at their YouTube channel. It's Twins the New Trend, and it's a show where they just watch. They listen to music. Right, they listen to music for the first time, and so they're listening to In the Air Tonight, and they get to the part with the boom, 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 and their faces just like go whoa! It's like, oh my god! And that reaction essentially went viral.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. And then you start digging through all of their stuff. Like they listened to Jolene for the first time. They listened to like Nirvana for the first time.
Yeah, Johnny Cash is Hurt, Led Zeppelin, Whole Lot of Love. Like basically they're listening to
a lot of old soul music and stuff too that they may not have heard.
They're just listening to a lot of old music, period. I mean, they're in their early 20s, I believe, if 22. Not younger. 22. I mean, so they're super young. But what's really cool about what they're doing is they clearly went into this not with the idea of we're looking for ways to cap on this music. They went into it looking for ways to genuinely love it. Like, okay, let's explore something we know nothing about.
Yeah.
And what's awesome is, like, often the easiest way to sell stuff through social media, to go viral, whatever, like snark can be the easiest way. Making fun of shit can be the easiest way to get that reaction. They've been going about it the opposite, which I think, combined with their sincere reactions to all this stuff, it's just really fun.
Right. And quite frankly, really, and I read this in a couple articles, like, are you surprised? Why do you think people are so surprised by you? And they're like, in part because we're, young Black kids listening to a lot of white music, and like, people don't expect it and all that. But there is an optimism to watching this stuff that is awesome. And by the way, guys clearly have some pretty good taste. Like they understand like what's a good song, even if it's sort of outside your genre and outside, your experience or what's popular among your friends. So, but it is kind of fun to just kind of think about. It's hard to remember. Like I don't get a chance to listen to a lot of really new music anymore. I don't read anymore. I don't do anything anymore. Children ruin everything.
Yeah, they do.
But there are a couple moments I
You got
remember,
3
like
times the children that I do. So I mean,
it's
everything's getting
at
ruined.
least too many.
Hmm.
Um, I remember the first time I heard Abbey Road and listened to that all the way through. I remember exactly the first time I listened to Purple Rain and to uh, Around the World in a Day.
Hmm.
I remember the first time I heard like a real jazz song, which was My Favorite Things by John Coltrane.
Yeah.
And like
It's the entryway for a lot of people.
it is. And but like that made like these little moments that like make an impression where you can feel like a little door opening. They're
Hmm.
really cool. I wish there
Yeah.
were more of them.
Well, I started thinking about with this, like if I could go back, what I would want to hear again for the first time. And like these are just a few of the songs that came to me. Like it's funny, like I'm such a big Prince guy, but I like Prince didn't come to mind for me just because his stuff, like I still hear new and different things, after like 20, 30 years of listening to his stuff. Like I
Right.
still hear things and notice things. So like a lot of Prince didn't come to mind to me. Like I would love to hear either Are You Experienced or Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. Like, particularly Are You Experienced? I remember hearing that and having my mind blown by just the construction of the song because it's a really the sound is unusual. The pace of it is really unusual. Like, the
But
guitar solo
the
of it.
energy on that song
Right.
and
Like,
just like the drive of that song.
and like the effect of it too, like the effects being used, like a lot of it sounds like it's almost running backwards, like
Mhm.
it's a really. And I remember I heard it for the first time like in 5th or 6th grade, and my mind just being blown by like, okay, you can do this. Like I didn't know you could do this in a song. Radiohead, Everything in Its Right Place off Kid A, like the sound of
Yeah.
that is so different and unusual. It was unusual for them, but also just, they're one of my favorite bands, and it really was like the inflection point of, I think, of a brand new direction for them. Higher Ground by Stevie Wonder.
Mm.
I would love to be able to hear that again for the first time. Inner City Blues by Marvin Gaye, like off an album. I mean, frankly, being able to hear What's Going On again for the first time would be amazing. And then the last one that popped in mind for me, Brian, and I'm thinking about this specifically from the perspective of an adult versus being able to hear it again for the first time when I want to say 17. The album Paul's Boutique by the Beastie
Mm.
Boys,
For sure.
because the first time I heard it, I didn't get it. Like the album was so far ahead of its time and so not licensed to ill too, which is what everybody, including me, wanted. And the album is so just dense in the way it's created and all the samples on top of samples and so out there. I remember that when I heard it in high school, like I didn't hate it. I just didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me like a couple years later. It was like my first
albums like that are fun, where you have to kind of go into them a little bit.
Right.
Like, Radiohead's a little like that, where you can like something on the first listen, but you have to give it three. I don't want to say like album making in that way.
It's different now.
Kind of doesn't exist anymore.
Albums
in that way
don't have the same currency as the album end to end song.
I'm not saying it's literally non-existent, but it's not what it was.
No, it isn't. I mean, I have friends in the music industry. I'll say the same thing.
Right.
But like, I would love the ability to hear Paul's Boutique for the first time as somebody that could get it. Because again, my first experience hearing it was just, I don't get this.
Would you rather go back and listen to Paul's Boutique for the first time and have that experience, or have sex for the first time and have that experience?
You mean of getting it, like knowing what I'm supposed to be doing, like that thing?
I interpret the question however you will.
Well, I mean, you posed it.
Well, because a lot of people would just automatically jump to sex, but I actually think because of like the first time, like I'm very good at it. You don't really know. You're mostly. I remember personally, it was mostly I was just going, I'm having sex. Like I wasn't really enjoying it. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing.
You know what? I think honestly,
it's just like not a virgin anymore. All right, move along.
I think I'd go with the music. I
Me
feel
too.
like because the first time you hear music, there's going to be other first times for music, like first time with sex, sort of just first time with sex. And I think it would be sort of weird to have. I mean, first of all, you start getting into way too old for this to feel like.
Right. No, I mean, if you break the question down, there are problems, but you understand what I'm getting. Like, sort of in first time things. I actually
think it's the music.
I agree with you.
With the music.
I think it's a more impactful experience, like in terms of the actual joy and pleasure that comes with hearing and the impact that comes with hearing the music.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think unless you're going to go back, I guess somehow like you start getting into like big territory where you're going like, or reverse big, or,
right.
I guess you're more like, what is it? Like vice versa? the judge.
I'm not sure. I get what you're saying. I'm not sure.
Unless you're starting to get into like body switching territory.
There's a lot to think about.
I feel like the music is sort of the obvious answer.
Yeah, but losing your virginity it's much like sex for the first time is much more just about like getting it out of the way for most people, getting out of the way and just like not being a virgin anymore. Right. All right, so go check out this stuff if you haven't seen it. Most people seem to have, because their subscriber count went from like 20,000 to 320,000. The last time I looked, the Williams brothers, 22-year-olds from Gary, Indiana. All right, so Andy, we made another podcast. We're back. Land Lakers podcast. Thanks again to Delicious Pizza, 2 locations, West Adams and in Hollywood. 20% off when you tell them that the Cam brothers sent you there. And we'll be back. Where every Monday there will be a new show with other shows kind of mixed in there.
And we've got the whole multimedia experience now.
Yes, look at this.
Take you this in. It's not just podcasting anymore.
No.
We got the whole 9. Make sure you're subscribing to everything: the podcast feed, YouTube channel, Facebook, blah blah blah.
You gotta get the whole experience, because in a few months, Andy, we might go hologram.
Yeah.
And you want to be there for that. You want to make sure you're ready and you get that memo. All right, so we'll be back. At worst, we'll be back next week, but probably somewhere in the middle. All right, see everybody. Have a great time. Thanks for listening.